The moment Marcus Thorne fired me, he didn't just end my career at Sterling Cross. He handed me the keys to his own destruction. He just didn't know it yet. For 5 years, I was Amari's Blake, his golden girl, the strategic analyst who could see the cracks in any deal. I built my life around one simple belief, that integrity was the only currency that truly mattered. On a cold Friday afternoon in October, I learned that my boss traded in a very different currency. Lies. Amari's, please have a seat. His voice was smooth, practiced, the same tone he used to charm hostile board members, but his eyes, usually so engaged, were distant. The leather of the visitor's chair in his corner office felt cold against my skin. Outside, the New York skyline glittered, a city of infinite possibilities. Inside this glass box, my possibilities were about to shrink to zero. He pushed a single white envelope across the vast expanse of his mahogany desk. My name was printed on it in sterile, corporate font. As you know, we're undergoing some significant restructuring, he began, the words sounding hollow, rehearsed. And after a careful review of the department's performance metrics, we've had to make some difficult decisions. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Performance metrics. I had single-handedly saved the company $80 million on the Triptych merger last year. I was the one they called at 2 a.m. when a deal in Asia was falling apart. I was his secret weapon. He said so himself 100 times. I stared at him, searching for a flicker of the mentor I thought he was, the man who had toasted my promotions and praised my work ethic. I found nothing but a stranger wearing his face. Marcus, I don't understand. My performance reviews, they've always been exceptional. The Veridian deal is on the verge of closing because of my team's work. A shadow passed over his features at the mention of Veridian, so quick I almost missed it. This isn't personal, Amari's, it's business. The board wants a leaner, more aggressive team moving forward. He stood up. The universal signal for this conversation is over. Security will escort you to your desk to gather your personal belongings. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. And just like that, it was done. 5 years of my life erased in 5 minutes. The walk back to my desk was a blur of averted gazes and sympathetic, useless glances from my colleagues. I packed my box in a daze, the photos of my family, the stupid little plant I'd managed to keep alive, the framed copy of my first signed deal. Each item felt like a relic from a life that was no longer mine. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the box of my professional life sitting on the floor like a coffin. The shock had worn off, replaced by a deep, gnawing grief. I had given everything to that company, to that man. I opened my personal laptop, intending to start the soul-crushing process of updating my resume. But first, I had to clean up my files, untangle my personal life from the corporate one. I logged into my cloud storage, the drive I used to back up important documents, both personal and professional, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't a file, but a notification. An automated email from the system, timestamped at 5:03 p.m., just minutes after Marcus had fired me. The subject line was innocuous. A file has been permanently deleted from a shared directory. My heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. I clicked it open. The message was simple, clinical. The following file was permanently deleted from the Executive Strategy, shared folder by user M. Thorne, Veridian Due Diligence Red Flag Report a Blake, PDF. Time stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. The Red Flag Report. It was my secret appendix to the main Veridian analysis, a 30-page document I had compiled and sent to Marcus 2 weeks ago. In it, I had meticulously detailed my horrifying discovery. Veridian Dynamics, the green energy startup Sterling Cross was about to acquire for $500 million, was a house of cards. Their revolutionary hydrofusion technology was a technological mirage, a cleverly marketed patent that was scientifically unsound and commercially non-viable. My report concluded, in no uncertain terms, that the acquisition would be catastrophic. It was fraud, wrapped in a green flag. I had given it to Marcus, trusting him to do the right thing to present it to the board. He had looked me in the eye and said, "Incredible work, Amari's. This is why you're my best analyst. Let me handle it." He had handled it. He had buried it. Then he had fired the only person who knew it existed. The grief in my chest instantly evaporated, replaced by something cold, sharp, and intensely clear. This wasn't about restructuring. This wasn't about performance. I was fired to be silenced. Marcus was knowingly pushing a fraudulent deal through to the board, a deal that would secure him a massive bonus and a rumored promotion to vice chairman. He was willing to risk the company's future, the shareholders, money, and countless jobs, all for his own ambition. He hadn't just ended my career, he had tried to make me an accomplice to his crime by erasing my warning. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my mind racing. He had deleted the file from the company's server, but he didn't know about my personal backup system. I navigated to my private, encrypted folder. And there it was. Veridian due diligence red flag report a Blake, PDF, a perfect copy, my proof, my weapon. My first thought was to send it to the board, to the SEC, to the New York Times, burn him to the ground, but I stopped myself. Marcus was a master of corporate politics. He would paint me as a disgruntled, fired employee seeking revenge. He would dismiss the report as sour grapes, a flawed analysis from someone who wasn't a team player. They would investigate, sure, but he would wrap himself in so much plausible deniability that he might just walk away clean, leaving me as the crazy ex-employee. No, that wasn't enough. Justice didn't just mean exposing the lie. It meant exposing the liar. I had to show the board, the world, not just what he did, but who he was. I needed to let his own greed, his own arrogance, be the instruments of his downfall. I had to build a trap so perfect, so tailored to his specific brand of ambition, that he would walk into it himself, whistling a happy tune. I stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city that now felt hostile and alien. The glittering towers no longer looked like symbols of opportunity, but like monuments to the very corruption I had just uncovered. Marcus thought he had erased me. He thought I was just another quiet casualty of corporate warfare. He forgot what my real job was. I don't just find the cracks in a deal. I find the cracks in a person's character. A new kind of energy flowed through me, a sense of purpose so intense it made my hands steady. This was no longer about my lost job. This was about the echo of integrity. My integrity. I would create a scenario, a deal so irresistible that Marcus would have to have it. And in his rush to claim his prize, he would expose himself for exactly what he was, a gambler willing to bet everyone else's money. I turned back to my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I named it with two simple words, a promise to myself and a declaration of war against the man who had underestimated me. Project Aura. My revenge began not with a bang, but with a quiet click of a mouse. The day after I was fired, I transferred 75% of my life savings into a new business account. My 401k, my stock portfolio, every dollar I had painstakingly saved was now fuel for the fire I was about to build. This wasn't just a plan, it was a promise, and I was funding it with my entire future. For the next 3 weeks, I worked with a clinical, detached fury I didn't know I possessed. Sleep was a luxury. Food was an afterthought. My world shrank to the 4 walls of my apartment and the glowing screen of my laptop. I started by creating the bait. I founded a shell corporation, Aura Innovations, LLC, registered in Delaware for maximum anonymity. I hired a web developer in Ukraine to build a sleek, professional website filled with impressive but intentionally vague technical jargon about machine learning and predictive analytics. The centerpiece of this digital facade was a detailed white paper for a fictional product I named Project Chimera. It was a masterpiece of deception, a hypothetical AI-driven trading algorithm that promised to predict market fluctuations with 98% accuracy. It was exactly the kind of revolutionary, high-reward, high-risk tech that a man like Marcus Thorne would find utterly irresistible. The genius of it, if I could call it that, was in the flaws I carefully wove into its data models. They were subtle, buried deep in the appendices, discoverable only by an analyst who was meticulous, principled, and given enough time to do their job properly. I was betting that Marcus was none of those things. Next, I needed a face for my phantom company. I couldn't be involved directly. I called the only person I knew I could trust with a secret of this magnitude, Julian Vance, a dear friend from my college drama club who, after a brief and uninspiring acting career, was now a happily retired high school theater teacher. He was charismatic, brilliant at improvisation, and most importantly, he loathed corporate greed with a theatrical passion. When I explained the plan over coffee, his eyes lit up. "So you're saying I get to play the role of a reclusive tech genius and take down a Wall Street villain? Amaris, darling, this is the role I was born for." Julian became the fictional CEO of Aura, a man too brilliant and eccentric to deal with corporate suits directly, communicating only through his representatives. The final piece of the setup was creating a sense of urgency. I had lunch with an old friend, a sharp-witted journalist who covered the financial tech beat for a major publication. I didn't tell her the whole truth, only that I was consulting for an anonymous new startup with groundbreaking tech and that Sterling Cross's biggest competitor, a ruthless firm named Blackwood Capital was sniffing around. That was all it took. 2 days later, a short but tantalizing article appeared online, a whisper of a new market-disrupting AI from a stealth company called Aura. It mentioned Blackwood's potential interest. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was wait for the shark to smell the blood in the water. I didn't have to wait long. Less than a week later, an introductory email landed in the generic info account I had created for Aura. It was from a junior acquisitions associate at Sterling Cross. They had noted with interest the recent market chatter and wished to open a preliminary dialogue. I smiled. The shark was circling. Julian, with me feeding him lines through an earpiece from my apartment, handled the initial calls. He was perfect. He played the part of the slightly arrogant, impatient representative of a genius who didn't have time for corporate formalities. He stonewalled their basic due diligence questions, claiming the technology was too proprietary to share without a firm letter of intent. He let it slip that they were in advanced talks with another, more agile firm. Every move was calculated to inflame Marcus's two greatest weaknesses, his greed and his fear of being beaten by a rival. I recorded every single call. The first time I heard Marcus's voice on the line, my hands grew cold. He had taken over the negotiations personally. "Let's cut to the chase," he said, his voice dripping with false camaraderie. "My team is telling me they need more data, more projections, more time. I say, visionaries don't wait for spreadsheets. What's it going to take to get this deal done now?" "Our founder values speed and decisiveness," Julian replied, his voice a cool counterpoint to Marcus's manufactured urgency. "He believes the technology speaks for itself." "I agree completely," Marcus boomed. "I'll have a preliminary offer on your desk by Monday. Forget the red tape." The red tape. The very thing designed to prevent disasters like the Viridian deal. He was casting it aside, just as I knew he would. The pieces were falling into place. The turning point came 2 weeks into the negotiation. As I'd hoped, someone on Marcus's team had found one of the flaws I'd planted. It was a young analyst named Clara. I remembered her from the office, bright, quiet, always meticulously prepared. She was a younger version of me. Through my old network of contacts, I heard what happened next. In a team meeting to review the Aura deal, Clara had raised a concern about an anomaly in the backtesting data, a statistical impossibility that suggested the algorithm's results might be inflated. Instead of listening, Marcus had publicly humiliated her. He called her academically brilliant but commercially naive, and said her kind of pedantic risk aversion was why Sterling Cross was losing its edge. He told her to get on board or get out of the way. He wanted the win, and he was willing to bulldoze anyone, even his own people, to get it. That evening, an anonymous email appeared in my personal inbox. "I think you were right about him," it read. "I don't know what you're planning, but if you need help from the inside, I'm here." It was from Clara. We met in a dimly lit corner of a coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from the watchful eyes of Wall Street. She was nervous, clutching her cup with trembling hands, but her eyes held a fire of conviction. "He's doing it again, isn't he?" she whispered. "With this Aura deal. He's ignoring the warnings, just like I suspect he did with you." I didn't confirm or deny, but I saw in her the same sense of betrayed integrity that had fueled me. She became my eyes and ears. She forwarded me internal emails where Marcus pressured the team to accelerate their analysis. She gave me the schedule for the upcoming quarterly board meeting, and she confirmed my worst fears. Marcus was planning to present his triumphant acquisition of Aura Innovations in the very same meeting where the board was set to give its final, rubber stamp approval on the Viridian deal. He was going to use the hype from my fake company to distract from the fraud of his real one. He was building his own gallows. With everything I needed now in my possession, the Viridian red flag report, the recordings of Marcus dismissing due diligence on Aura, Clara's testimony via internal emails, I took the final step. I had to get to the board, but not all of them. I needed the right one. Eleanor Vance, the matriarch of the board, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her late 60s with a reputation for unimpeachable integrity and a low tolerance for corporate theatrics. She was the one board member who had, according to the minutes Clara sent me, asked pointed questions about the lack of independent verification on Viridian's technology. My hands were steady as I typed the email. The subject line was simple: confidential information regarding the Viridian Dynamics and Aura Innovations acquisitions. The body of the email was short, just 3 sentences. "Dear Mrs. Vance, my name is Amaris Blake, formerly a senior analyst under Marcus Thorne. I was terminated last month after submitting a high-level risk report concerning the Viridian deal. I have come into possession of evidence that demonstrates a pattern of deliberate misrepresentation and negligence by Mr. Thorne that poses a catastrophic risk to the company and its shareholders. I respectfully request 10 minutes of your time to present my findings. I attached nothing. No files, no recordings, just the words. I hit send, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. My entire plan, my entire future, hinged on this one woman's curiosity and her conscience. For 3 agonizing hours, there was only silence. I paced my apartment, my mind replaying every decision, every risk. Then my phone chimed with a new email notification. It was from her. The message was even shorter than mine. I will listen. The day of the Sterling Cross quarterly board meeting was unnervingly beautiful. The sky over Manhattan was a crisp, cloudless blue, the kind of perfect autumn day that makes you believe anything is possible. From a sterile, borrowed office space 10 blocks away, I watched it all unfold on a secure video feed. Eleanor Vance had been true to her word. I wasn't just given a chance to speak. I was given a digital seat at the table, a silent, invisible observer until she gave me the signal. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of my own making. This was it, the culmination of weeks of sleepless nights, of risks that had mortgaged my entire future. The meeting began with Marcus Thorne, resplendent in a charcoal suit, taking the floor. He was in his element, a master showman playing to his most important audience. He spoke first of the Viridian Dynamics acquisition, painting it as a visionary leap into the future of green energy. He glossed over the technical details, his voice booming with confidence, citing projected revenues that I knew were pure fiction. The board, lulled by his charisma and the allure of a landmark deal, nodded along. No one challenged him. The rubber stamp was poised to fall. Then, he moved to his grand finale. And while securing our future in the energy sector is monumental, he declared, a triumphant smile spreading across his face, I'm here today to announce that we haven't just secured the future, we have acquired it. He launched into his presentation on Aura Innovations. He spoke of Project Chimera as if he had conceived of it himself, calling it a paradigm-shifting asset that would make Sterling Cross the undisputed king of financial technology. He presented the deal as a personal victory, a testament to his aggressive, forward-thinking leadership that had snatched this prize from the jaws of their rival Blackwood Capital. And the best part, he concluded, leaning forward conspiratorially, is that we got it done in record time, bypassing the bureaucratic sludge that so often makes us miss opportunities like this. That was the signal. On my screen, I saw Eleanor Vance raise a single, perfectly manicured hand. An impressive presentation, Marcus, she said, her voice cutting through the self-congratulatory atmosphere in the room like glass. But I have a question about the founder of this remarkable company. He seems quite elusive. I was wondering if we might hear from him directly. Marcus froze for a fraction of a second, a flicker of panic in his eyes before the mask of confidence snapped back into place. As I mentioned, he's quite the eccentric. He prefers to let the technology speak for itself. I'm sure he does, Eleanor interrupted smoothly. But as it happens, I was able to arrange a brief call. I believe she is on the line now. On the large screen behind Marcus, his own PowerPoint presentation vanished, replaced by my face, live from 10 blocks away. I kept my expression neutral, my gaze fixed directly on the camera on him. Hello, Marcus, I said, my voice calm and clear. I trust you remember me. The color drained from his face. The silence in the boardroom was absolute, a vacuum of shock and confusion. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost he had personally buried. My name is Amaris Blake, I said, addressing the entire room. And I am the founder, creator, and sole employee of Aura Innovations. I didn't wait for the explosion of questions. I began my presentation. Methodically, clinically, I deconstructed the entire charade. I explained that Aura was a shell, Project Chimera a fiction, the entire negotiation a test. I played the audio clips, Marcus dismissing due diligence, Marcus pressuring his team to ignore red flags, Marcus boasting that he would forget the red tape. With every piece of evidence, I could see his composure cracking, the carefully constructed image of the master of the universe crumbling into dust. Then, I delivered the final, fatal blow. This reckless gamble was not an isolated incident, I said, my voice ringing with a conviction I didn't know I had. It is part of a dangerous pattern, and the proof of that lies in the Viridian Dynamics deal you are about to approve. I shared my screen. And there, for the entire board to see, was the cover page of my 30-page red flag report, the one he had deleted. the one that proved he was knowingly committing the firm to a $500 million fraud. I submitted this report to Mr. Thorne 2 weeks before he terminated me for performance issues, I explained. He buried my findings. He silenced me, and he was about to let you walk the entire company off a cliff, all for his own personal gain. I finished and simply waited. The silence that followed was heavier, colder than before. It was the silence of judgment. Marcus stood there, speechless, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He had been so thoroughly, so completely outplayed, that there was nothing left for him to say. He had walked into my trap, and the door had just slammed shut behind him. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Marcus was suspended by the end of the meeting and unceremoniously fired by the end of the day. The Veridian deal was killed, and a formal investigation was launched that would later lead to SEC charges against him. Sterling Cross was saved from a catastrophe, not by its visionary leader, but by the analyst he had tried to erase. Clara, who had bravely corroborated my story, was promoted, recognized for the very integrity her boss had tried to punish. 2 days later, Eleanor Vance called me personally. She offered a heartfelt apology on behalf of the board and then made me an offer. A newly created senior vice president position, head of a new department of strategic risk and diligence, with full autonomy and a salary that made my eyes water. It was everything I had ever worked for. The victory, the recognition, the corner office. I listened politely, and when she was finished, I gave her an answer that surprised us both. "Thank you, Mrs. Vance. I'm truly honored," I said, and I meant it. "But I have to decline." It was in that moment that my healing truly began. For weeks, my entire existence had been defined by Marcus Thorne, by his betrayal, by my plan to expose him. Winning felt good, but it also felt empty. Returning to that building, to that culture, felt like a step backward, like letting his actions continue to define my life. My victory wasn't getting my old life back. It was realizing I had the power to build a new one. "I've learned that you can't fix a broken system from the inside," I told her. "Not when you've seen how easily its checks and balances can be corrupted. I need to build something of my own." 6 months later, I did just that. I opened Blake Advisory, a boutique consultancy firm specializing in ethical due diligence and corporate integrity. We don't just find the financial flaws in a deal, we find the moral ones. My first client was Blackwood Capital. They'd heard the story of what happened and wanted to hire the woman who had built a company from scratch just to prove a point. I no longer work from a glass tower overlooking the city. My office is smaller, quieter, but it's mine. Success isn't about the title on your business card or the size of your bonus. It's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and respect the person you see. They tried to bury me under a lie, but they forgot a fundamental truth. You can't bury a seed. You can only give it the darkness it needs to grow. My name is Amaris Blake, and this is not the end of my story. It's the beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I get to be the one who writes it.